In the year 1600, one city sat between worlds. Christian and Muslim, East and West, ancient empire and modern power. Constantinople was no longer Rome, but it wasn't yet just Istanbul. It was the most dangerous, desired, and watched city on Earth. By 1600, Constantinople carried more history within its walls than most countries possessed on paper. Founded as Byzantium, reshaped as Constantinople in 330 CE, and transformed again after the Ottoman conquest of 1453, the city existed as a living archive of empire. Roman columns still stood beside Byzantine churches converted into mosques. Ancient aqueducts continued to supply water, just as they had for over 1,000 years. Streets followed routes laid out by emperors long dead, while markets operated beneath domes raised centuries earlier. For those who lived there, the past was not abstract. It was visible in stone, ritual, and habit. Ottoman officials governed from former imperial precincts. Greek Orthodox communities worshipped under regulations shaped by conquest but rooted in Byzantine tradition. Constantinople in 1600 was not a rebuilt city. It was an inherited one, shaped daily by memories of power, loss, and continuity that no conquest had fully erased. After the Ottoman conquest in 1453, Sultan Mehmed II declared the city his new capital. Officially, it became Constantinople later, increasingly called Istanbul in everyday speech. Yet by 1600, the transformation was incomplete. European diplomats, merchants, and maps still called it Constantinople, a name loaded with imperial memory. Even within the city, continuity mattered as much as change. The Ottomans preserved much of the existing urban fabric, repurposing rather than erasing it. Hagia Sophia became a mosque, but its structure remained untouched. Former Byzantine administrative districts became Ottoman quarters. Laws, taxation systems, and population registers acknowledged inherited communities rather than replacing them. This was not symbolic hesitation. It was governance. The city's authority depended on its past legitimacy. Constantinople's name, spaces, and institutions still carried weight in diplomacy and trade, reminding both rulers and residents that conquest had altered power, but it had not erased history. By 1600, the Ottoman Empire ruled territories stretching from Hungary to Arabia, and Constantinople stood at the center of that vast system. The reign of Mehmed III marked a moment of immense reach and growing strain. Wars against the Habsburg monarchy in Europe and the Safavid Empire in the East demanded constant manpower and money. Inflation, driven by global silver flows, disrupted salaries and food prices in the capital. The Janissaries, once an elite military force, increasingly intervened in politics, staging protests and rebellions within the city itself. From Constantinople, imperial orders still radiated outward, but the system required constant pressure to hold together. Power remained immense, yet fragile. The city reflected this contradiction daily. Ceremonial grandeur alongside administrative anxiety, confidence shadowed by the awareness that empire required relentless maintenance to survive. By 1600, Constantinople was the most closely observed capital in the world. From its shores, the Ottomans monitored Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East simultaneously. Ambassadors from Venice, France, and England maintained permanent missions, reporting every shift in court politics. To the west, rivalry with the Habsburg monarchy shaped military planning and diplomacy. To the east, conflict with the Safavid Empire was not only territorial but religious, dividing Sunni and Shiite power. Intelligence, trade, and diplomacy converged in the capital's harbors and palaces. Decisions made in Constantinople could redirect armies, disrupt trade routes, or alter alliances across continents. The city functioned as a geopolitical hinge. Whoever controlled it influenced the balance between empires that did not trust one another, yet could not afford to look away. Religion shaped daily life in Constantinople, but it did so through structure rather than chaos. By 1600, the city housed Muslims, Greek Orthodox Christians, Armenians, Jews, and smaller communities, all governed under Ottoman law. The state recognized religious difference through the millet system, granting limited autonomy in exchange for loyalty and taxation. The Greek Orthodox Church retained its patriarchate within the city, operating under imperial oversight. Synagogues and churches functioned openly, but never outside regulation. Public space reflected hierarchy. Mosques dominated the skyline, while non-Muslim worship remained less visible. Coexistence was real but conditional. Stability depended on order, not equality. Faith in Constantinople was inseparable from power, reminding residents that tolerance existed not as an ideal, but as a carefully managed instrument of imperial control. By 1600, daily life in Constantinople unfolded in constant proximity to power. The streets around the Grand Bazaar pulsed with traders moving spices, textiles, metalwork, and coin from 3 continents. Ports along the Golden Horn unloaded grain from the Black Sea and goods from the Mediterranean. Coffee houses, still a relatively recent arrival, became spaces for news, debate, and surveillance. Uniformed janissaries were a common sight, not only as soldiers but as political actors embedded in urban life. Public fountains, baths, and mosques structured the rhythm of the day. Imperial authority was never distant. For residents, governance was experienced not through decrees but through markets regulated, prices enforced, and order maintained in streets where the empire's presence was visible and unavoidable. Constantinople's power rested not only on armies but on movement. By 1600, the city was a central node linking Mediterranean shipping, Black Sea grain routes, and overland trade from Persia and Central Asia. Venetian merchants operated under long-standing capitulations granted to the Republic of Venice, while English traders arrived through the Levant Company, seeking silk, spices, and diplomatic access. Goods passed through customs offices that doubled as intelligence points. Information moved as quickly as cargo. Prices, shortages, and rumors from distant fronts circulated through merchants long before official reports reached European courts. The Ottoman state monitored this flow closely, understanding that trade was inseparable from security. In Constantinople, commerce did not merely enrich the empire. It revealed its vulnerabilities and broadcast its strength to the wider world. By the early 17th century, pressure on Constantinople was no longer abstract. Prolonged warfare strained the treasury, while population growth pushed food supplies to their limits. Grain shortages and rising prices triggered unrest that the capital felt immediately. The janissaries, increasingly politicized, resisted reforms and defended their privileges through open demonstrations, sometimes forcing policy changes by presence alone. At the same time, rebellions in Anatolia disrupted tax flows and recruitment, weakening the system that sustained the city. Imperial authority still functioned, but it relied more heavily on negotiation and force within its own capital. Constantinople remained secure, yet tense. Order depended on constant management, revealing an empire capable of command, but increasingly aware that stability was no longer guaranteed by tradition or conquest alone. In hindsight, Constantinople in 1600 marked a threshold rather than a climax. The city still stood at the center of global politics, yet the conditions that had sustained imperial dominance were beginning to change. European states expanded Atlantic trade routes that bypassed Ottoman-controlled corridors. Military competition intensified, demanding new technologies and financial systems. Inside the empire, administrative strain and social tension signaled that inherited structures would not remain static. Constantinople absorbed these shifts first. Its markets reflected new economic pressures. Its court confronted diplomatic realities beyond earlier precedent, and its population felt the consequences of a world growing more interconnected. What made 1600 significant was not collapse, but transition. The city remained powerful, but it was now navigating a future shaped less by legacy and more by adaptation, marking the beginning of a new historical phase whose outcomes were still uncertain. Constantinople had endured siege, conquest, and reinvention. Yet by 1600, it remained what it had always been, a city shaped by time more than by any single ruler. Known officially as Istanbul, but remembered globally as Constantinople, it carried identities that no decree could fully settle. Its walls still guarded ancient roots between continents. Its skyline told stories of belief, power, and continuity, layered across centuries. For those who lived there, history was not distant. It framed their work, their worship, and their politics. Long after empires shifted, the city's position endured. Constantinople did not merely witness history. It compelled it, standing at the edge of Iris, never finished, never forgotten.